I have often found myself staring at the darkest, most painful chapters of human existence and asking a question that has haunted humanity for millennia. If God is real, if He is entirely good, and if He possesses the absolute power to alter the course of human events, why does He so often let us walk directly into the fire? We are wired to pray for prevention. When the diagnosis is looming, when the financial ruin is at our doorstep, or when a relationship is fracturing beyond repair, our most instinctual plea is for a blockade. We ask the divine to intervene, to change the circumstances, to extinguish the flames before we ever have to feel their heat. We want a God who builds a fence around us, keeping the tragedies of a broken world at a comfortable distance. But history, both sacred and secular, rarely reflects that kind of sanitized reality. Instead, it confronts us with a deeply unsettling paradox. Sometimes, the ultimate proof of divine love is not found in the prevention of suffering, but in the agonizing endurance of it. To understand this paradox, we have to travel back over 2.5 millennia to the sun-baked plains of Dura, in the heart of the ancient Babylonian Empire. Here lies the setting of arguably the most famous story of survival in human history, the narrative found in the 3rd chapter of the Book of Daniel. It is the story of 3 young Jewish exiles, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and their terrifying encounter with a blazing furnace. For many of us, this is a story we first heard in childhood, presented with colorful illustrations and a simple moral about doing the right thing. It is often summarized neatly. The king demanded they bow to a statue. They refused, they were thrown into a fire, and God miraculously saved them. But when we strip away the Sunday school simplicity and examine the historical, psychological, and spiritual realities of this event, it ceases to be a mere children's fable. It becomes a raw, terrifying, and profoundly complex exploration of human suffering and divine intent. Why did God let them burn? Why didn't He strike the Babylonian king with lightning the moment the decree was issued? Why didn't He send a torrential rainstorm to flood the furnace and render it useless? He had the power to stop the execution before the 3 young men were even bound, yet He remained completely silent while they were stripped of their dignity, tied with rough cords, and dragged toward a heat so intense it was practically melting the air around them. The silence of heaven in the face of their impending doom is deafening. As I look at this story, I realize that it forces us to confront our deepest anxieties about faith. It asks us to consider what happens when our prayers for rescue are met with the terrifying roar of an approaching inferno. We are going to explore the architecture of ancient arrogance, the crushing psychology of conformity, the radical nature of unconditional faith, and the profound mystery of what actually occurred inside that ancient crucible. Because what happened inside that furnace changes absolutely everything we know about how the divine interacts with human pain. To truly grasp the magnitude of the choice these 3 men faced, we must first understand the crushing weight of the world they were living in. This was the Babylonian Empire, the undisputed superpower of the ancient Near East, ruled by King Nebuchadnezzar II. Nebuchadnezzar was not merely a political leader, he was an architect of absolute dominion, a psychological mastermind who understood that true power is not just about conquering land, but about subjugating the human mind. The setting for our narrative is the plain of Dura, a vast, flat expanse where the horizon stretches out endlessly. In the center of this plain, Nebuchadnezzar erected a monument of staggering proportions. A statue made entirely of gold, measuring 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide. In modern measurements, that is roughly 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. Imagine a structure the size of a 9-story building, glittering under the blinding Mesopotamian sun, visible for miles in every direction. But this statue was not just an architectural marvel. It was a deeply psychological weapon, born out of a profound insecurity and an insatiable ego. Earlier in the book of Daniel, in chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar had a terrifying dream of a giant statue with a head of gold, a chest of silver, a belly of bronze, legs of iron, and feet of clay. The prophet Daniel interpreted this dream, explaining that the golden head represented Nebuchadnezzar and his Babylonian empire, but that he would eventually be replaced by inferior kingdoms of silver, bronze, and iron. Nebuchadnezzar's response in chapter 3 is a direct, defiant middle finger to that divine prophecy. By building a statue entirely of gold from head to toe, he was making a theological and political statement. My kingdom will never fall. My legacy is eternal. I am the golden head, the golden chest, the golden legs. There will be no kingdom after me. It was an absolute rejection of vulnerability and a manifestation of supreme, blinding narcissism. To ensure total submission to his manufactured reality, Nebuchadnezzar orchestrated an event of unparalleled psychological pressure. He summoned the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces. He gathered the entire administrative backbone of his empire. And then he weaponized sensory overload. The herald loudly proclaimed that whenever the people heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, they were to fall down and worship the golden image. Failure to do so would result in being immediately cast into a burning, fiery furnace. I want you to place yourself in that crowd. The atmosphere would have been electric, with a mixture of awe and primal terror. The sheer volume of the combined musical instruments echoing across the plain would have been deafening, a sonic trigger designed to bypass rational thought and induce immediate compliance. As the music blasted, tens of thousands of people, from the highest-ranking nobles to the lowest servants, simultaneously dropped to the dust. The psychology of the crowd is a powerful, terrifying force. When thousands of people around you are bowing, the pressure to conform is not just social, it is a survival instinct. To remain standing when the entire world drops to its knees is to paint a target on your own chest. It is the ultimate vulnerability. You are entirely exposed, standing tall like a solitary tree in a barren landscape, waiting for the lightning to strike. The music played, the masses hit the dirt, the dust billowed into the air, and in the midst of that sea of prostrate bodies, 3 lone figures remained completely, defiantly upright. They did not shout. They did not stage a violent protest. Their rebellion was a quiet, immovable stillness. They simply refused to bow. Who were these men who dared to defy the most powerful monarch on earth? We know them by their Babylonian names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But those were not the names their mothers gave them. Their true Hebrew names were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They were Jewish youths of noble birth who had been violently uprooted from their homeland of Judah when Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem in 586 BC. They were victims of one of history's most brutal campaigns of cultural assimilation. The Babylonians had taken everything from them. They had destroyed their city, burned their temple, slaughtered their families, and dragged them across hundreds of miles of unforgiving desert into exile. Upon arriving in Babylon, the empire systematically attempted to erase their identities. Their Hebrew names, which contained beautiful references to the God of Israel, Yahweh or El, were stripped away and replaced with names honoring Babylonian pagan deities like Marduk and Nabu. Furthermore, historical context strongly suggests that as youths chosen to serve in the king's court, They were likely castrated, made into eunuchs to ensure they could never have families of their own, forcing their total devotion to the state. Babylon had taken their homes, their families, their names, their freedom, and their physical bodily autonomy. But there was one sanctuary inside them that the empire could not breach: their minds and their faith. They had lost everything the physical world could offer, which ironically made them incredibly dangerous to a tyrant. When a man has already lost everything except his soul, you have very little left to threaten him with. When their defiance was reported, Nebuchadnezzar flew into a furious rage. He ordered them brought before him, offering them one final patronizing chance to bow. He challenged them with a chilling question. "And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" This was the ultimate collision of earthly power and spiritual conviction. The response of these three young men remains, to my mind, one of the most breathtaking declarations in recorded history. They did not stutter. They did not try to negotiate. They said, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king." But it is the next sentence that completely shatters our modern, comfortable paradigms of faith. They added, "But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." But if not. Those three words are the dividing line between transactional faith and unconditional faith. Transactional faith is the way most of us operate. God, I will follow you. I will be a good person. I will pray as long as you protect me, bless me, and keep the fire away. It is a business contract. But Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah possessed something far deeper. They knew God was entirely capable of saving them, but they had no guarantee that he actually would. They recognized that God's sovereignty meant he could choose to let them burn, and they decided in that split second that God's worthiness of their worship was not contingent upon their survival. Their loyalty was not a currency used to purchase a rescue operation. This is why God allowed them to face the fire. The furnace was not a punishment, it was the ultimate necessary stage. Without the very real threat of agonizing death, the world would never have witnessed the supreme beauty of a faith that says, "I love you more than I love my own life. Even if you let me die in the flames, I will still not bow to a lie." God let them walk toward the fire because he was allowing them to forge a testimony that would echo through millennia, proving that true faith cannot be bought, coerced, or burned away. Nebuchadnezzar's reaction to their calm, resolute defiance was visceral. The text notes that his facial expression literally distorted with rage. He had built a 90-foot statue to his own glory. He had manipulated the psychology of an entire empire, yet he was completely impotent against the quiet willpower of three captive refugees. His ego, fragile despite his absolute power, shattered. In a fit of irrational fury, he commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than it was usually heated. Let us pause and consider the pure physics and the profound irrationality of this command. These ancient furnaces were essentially massive, industrial-scale brick kilns. They were likely built with a large opening at the top to drop materials in, and a door at the bottom to extract the fired bricks or remove ash. By ordering the furnace heated 7 times hotter, a phrase likely meaning to heat it to its absolute maximum physical capacity, Nebuchadnezzar was acting against his own desire for vengeance. If you want someone to suffer, you roast them slowly over a low flame. By superheating the kiln until it was a roaring, white-hot inferno, he was actually ensuring that their deaths would be instantaneous, completely incinerating their nerve endings before they could even register the pain. But anger is rarely logical. The king was attempting to project an illusion of overwhelming control over a situation where he felt utterly powerless. He ordered the strongest, most elite warriors in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The young men were tied up securely, fully clothed in their cloaks, tunics, hats, and other garments. This detail is highly significant. Clothing acts as exceptional fuel. Putting bound, fully clothed men into a fire is ensuring maximum combustibility. They were dragged toward the top of the furnace. The heat radiating from the mouth of the kiln must have been incomprehensible. The air would have been sucked out of the surrounding atmosphere, creating a roaring vacuum of superheated wind. As they reached the precipice, the sheer thermal energy escaping the furnace was so violent, so intensely catastrophic, that the flames leaped out and instantly killed the elite soldiers who were pushing them in. This specific detail was meticulously recorded for a crucial reason. It obliterates any skeptical argument that the fire was merely an illusion, a magic trick, or that the furnace was simply warm. It establishes the brutal, undeniable reality of the physical threat. The fire was an absolute, indiscriminate consumer of life. It killed the strongest men in the empire in a fraction of a second. And then, the 3 Jewish exiles fell. I try to imagine that brief, terrifying descent. Bound by rough ropes, the intense heat blasting their faces, the roar of the fire drowning out everything else, plunging downward into the dark, swirling heart of a man-made hell. In those few seconds of freefall, they must have believed it was over. They had made their stand, they had spoken their truth, and now they were paying the ultimate price. They hit the floor of the furnace, engulfed in a raging sea of white-hot coals and explosive flames. From the outside, it looked like the definitive, tragic end of a noble but futile rebellion. Nebuchadnezzar sat on his throne, perhaps feeling a grim sense of satisfaction. The empire had won. The fire had consumed the anomaly. But as the smoke billowed and the flames danced, the laws of thermodynamics were about to be abruptly suspended by the author of physics himself. What happened next is one of the most stunning, paradigm-shifting moments in all of ancient literature. King Nebuchadnezzar, who was safely observing the execution from a distance, suddenly leaped to his feet in absolute terror and confusion. He turned to his counselors and asked, panicked, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" They confirmed that they had. Nebuchadnezzar stared into the roaring mouth of the furnace, his mind unable to process the data his eyes were transmitting. He stammered, "But I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." Let us dissect the anatomy of this miracle, because the details are profoundly revealing. First, consider what the fire actually accomplished. The young men were thrown into the furnace, tightly bound by ropes. When Nebuchadnezzar looks inside, he sees them unbound. The fire, which was hot enough to incinerate elite soldiers on the outside, did not burn the hair on the heads of the 3 youths, nor did it scorch their delicate woolen clothing. The only things the fire was permitted to consume were the ropes that bound them. I find this to be an incredibly beautiful, poetic reality of how God often operates. Sometimes, the divine purpose of the fire is not to destroy us, but to burn away the things that are keeping us tied down. The suffering, the crisis, the agonizing heat of our circumstances might be the very instrument God uses to incinerate our attachments, our false securities, and the emotional or spiritual chains the world has placed upon us. They went into the fire as bound captives. They walked around inside the fire as free men. Secondly, and most importantly, we must confront the mystery of the 4th man. Who was he? Nebuchadnezzar, a pagan polytheist, described him as looking like a son of the gods. Christian theologians have long debated his identity. Many believe this was an angel of immense power, specifically dispatched from the throne room of heaven to shield the youths. A deeply compelling alternative view held by many scholars is that this was a Christophany, a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ himself, stepping out of eternity and into time, bearing the physical form of a man before his actual birth in Bethlehem. Regardless of whether it was a high-ranking angelic being or the creator of the universe himself, the theological implication remains identical and staggering. Notice what the fourth man did not do. He did not stand outside the furnace and blow the fire out. He did not wave a hand and teleport the three men back to their homes in Jerusalem. He did not alter the external circumstance at all. The furnace was still roaring. The heat was still at maximum capacity. Instead of taking them out of the fire, the divine presence stepped into the fire with them. This is the radical core of the story. The ultimate comfort of faith is not the promise of a pain-free life. It is the promise of an unabandoned life. God was saying to humanity, "I will not always extinguish the flames that threaten you, but I will enter the darkness with you. I will stand in the white-hot center of your greatest agony, and I will share the heat." Inside that furnace, the atmosphere shifted. The killing floor became a sanctuary. The three men were casually walking around, not scrambling for an exit, not screaming in pain, but pacing the coals as if they were strolling through a royal garden in the cool of the evening. Time and space seemed to suspend. The presence of the fourth man neutralized the hostility of the environment. The fire still possessed its visual terror, but it had entirely lost its power to consume. Eventually, Nebuchadnezzar approached the door of the blazing furnace and shouted over the roar of the flames, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." The three men simply walked out of the inferno. As they emerged into the blinding daylight, the satraps, governors, and counselors crowded around them, their jaws slack with disbelief. They scrutinized the three youths. The hair of their heads was not singed. Their cloaks were completely unharmed. And then, the text provides a detail so visceral, so specific, that it cements the miraculous nature of the event. No smell of fire had even come upon them. Anyone who has ever sat around a campfire for 5 minutes knows how deeply the scent of smoke permeates clothing and hair. It lingers for days. Yet, these men had just spent an undetermined amount of time walking inside an industrial furnace heated to its maximum capacity, and they emerged smelling like they had just stepped out of a fresh breeze. The divine protection was not partial, it was absolute. God did not just save their lives, He preserved their dignity. He brought them through the trauma in such a way that the trauma left absolutely zero residue on them. They were completely unmarred by the hell they had just endured. The psychological collapse of Nebuchadnezzar was complete. The monarch who, just hours earlier, had demanded universal worship for his golden ego, now publicly crumbled before the God of three conquered refugees. He issued a new decree, protecting the God of Israel from any blasphemy, acknowledging that there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way. The three young men were subsequently promoted, thriving in the very province where they were supposed to have been reduced to ashes. The fire that was designed to be their tomb became the platform for their unprecedented elevation, sparking a spiritual shockwave that reverberated through the political halls of the greatest empire on earth. When I look back at the entirety of this historical event, it forces a profound shift in perspective. We all have our own Babylonian plains. We all face moments where the music plays, the crowd bows to the glittering idols of wealth, status, compromise, or fear. and we are pressured to surrender our convictions just to survive. We all have our own furnaces: a devastating medical diagnosis, the catastrophic failure of a business, the sudden, heartbreaking loss of a loved one. The flames are real, and they are hot. The story of Daniel chapter 3 does not exist to promise us that if we just pray hard enough, the fire will be put out. It exists to teach us the profound difference between a faith that demands a rescue and a faith that rests in a relationship. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah taught the world that the most indestructible force on earth is a human spirit that says, "Even if he does not." And the mystery of the fourth man teaches us that our God is not a distant, detached observer of our pain. He is intimately, fiercely present. Sometimes he allows the fire to burn because he knows the flames will only destroy the ropes holding us back. And sometimes, the greatest miracle we will ever experience is not the avoidance of the furnace, but the quiet, overwhelming realization that as we walk through the absolute worst moments of our lives, there is another set of footprints in the ashes beside us, and we are not walking alone.